Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and welcome to Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, the show where we are committed to helping you learn everything you need to know to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. And today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, not only sales, but sales management. And I have with me, I think she is a sales expert, but she calls herself a sales nerd, Gretchen Gordon, author of this incredible book called The Happy Sales Manager. And Gretchen is going to enlighten us that actually sales leadership can be something that that is an enjoyable process. But more importantly, we're going to dive into what it really takes to sell in today's marketplace. So let's start the video and let's rock and roll. Again, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and welcome back to Thrive. Now, you all are kind of lucky that Gretchen and I even made it into this call today because I've got a place in South Carolina. She's got a place in South Carolina. We got a little sidetracked with that, and we didn't even get to golf. So it's kind of amazing that we even showed up here to talk about sales today. Now, Gretchen, I call you sales expert, sales guru. You title yourself as a sales nerd, but give our audience a little bit of background about who you are, how you got into the business, and what this obsession is that you have with making sales managers happy.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Meridith. I call myself, first of all, I call myself a sales nerd because I like to combine the science and the data with the art of selling and sales management. So I like all the data that supports the way salespeople and sales managers need to operate to be successful. I got into this business because I was a salesperson, but I wasn't the stereotypical, kind of natural born salesperson. I was miserable. I was all concerned. I worked for a great company that has a wonderful sales training program, but I was terrified of going in and talking to folks that I needed to sell to. And so fast forward, I had a variety of jobs. That was my first job out of college. And then I got promoted. I kind of, just through brute force, just kept after it, got promoted to sales management. And once again, I found myself in a very uncomfortable place. I thought just telling people what I had done to overcome my discomfort and unhappiness as a salesperson, just telling them to do what I did would work. And clearly it didn't. And I didn't really know how to master, the art of helping other people become the best salesperson that they can become, because there's very different skill sets. But what I learned, fast forward, what I've learned about why I was unhappy originally as a salesperson and why I struggled originally as a sales manager was because of my mindset. So in sales, I was too worried about what other people were thinking of me. I carried that over into sales management and I became worried about what salespeople were thinking about me. I wanted to be their buddy. And I approached it from a salesperson mentality and mindset, not a sales manager mindset, which requires that you focus on the other person, not on yourself, which is similar to what you have to do in sales. So that's why I'm passionate about this, because there's an awful lot of unhappy sales managers out there.
And there's a lot of unhappy salespeople. It's so interesting. So much I want to talk about here. I want to start with your journey in sales and just finding yourself in a really difficult position. Because I was on the same journey too. I mean, and what do you think it is about sales. I mean, when you get on the other side of sales, you see what a noble profession it is. I mean, in essence, what we do is we listen to people's problems, and then we go inside our mind of all the information we have, and we're trying to do anything that we can do to help them achieve the next goal. Where does that get derailed? And why do so many people struggle in sales? Why is it so stressful and we find it so uncomfortable?
Exactly what you just said is what was the turning point for me when I figured out that it wasn't about me trying to get the other party to buy something. It was me understanding them and what their goals are. So I think that the reason that, people struggle in sales and are unhappy is because they have this false belief that sales is trying to persuade somebody to do something that you want them to do, as
Mhm.
opposed to helping them accomplish their goals. And I think once, we figure out like, oh, I'm actually just helping people get what they want or what they need, or overcome an obstacle or solve a problem or get rid of something that's bugging them, it becomes fun, enjoyable, fulfilling, and noble. It's noble, and it becomes an honorable thing, as opposed to, I think what a lot of people have stuck in their head is this icky side of sales, which is those people who are trying to force people to do things.
Yeah, which is the way that great segue into sales management and sales leadership, right? Because so why the idea of the happy sales manager? I mean, in essence, is it that most sales managers are unhappy? What is kind of the genesis behind that?
I think that sales management is such a lonely
Yeah.
role in many cases, right? So, and it's generally that you're plucking a good salesperson and promoting them into sales management, and with no training, no expertise, nothing other than like, hey, get the sales team to do what you did. And so a lot of sales managers think that they're supposed to naturally know how to lead a sales team. And unfortunately, many of them don't. A small percentage, actually have all of the core competencies, I guess I would say, of being able to help inspire sales people on their team, coach them appropriately, and hold them accountable to the right behaviors. And so this is new territory for sales managers. So they feel stress, frustration. They don't understand why the salespeople don't just come motivated and do it, the way that they did it. And they're not going to admit it to their boss that they don't know what they're doing. So that's why I think there's just a lot of stress and frustration, and it's a lonely place to be. So I wrote the book, after years of thinking about it, that, to really help those people who need some skill sets, but they also need to have the right mindset.
Yeah. So I love that you titled it the happy sales manager. So let's dive a little bit into the book. And because to me, one of the reasons I think your book is so critical is because if you get leadership right, everything else will take care of itself. I think it is one of the I just wrote a blog for my website next week called "How Much Is Bad Leadership Costing You?" And it is, we will work to fix everything else. And we will have a leader who is okay at what they do, but not phenomenal at what they do. And I just always think if you would just fix that piece, you will fix everything else. And unfortunately, we do the antithesis of that. So what was the idea behind this? And dive into some of the thoughts with the book. Where's the foundation of where we're starting? And what does it take to create the happy sales manager?
Yeah, so you're exactly right that I agree completely with regard to leadership is critically important, and what I was witnessing is too often, let's say, executive leadership, you know, uh, decision makers at the top of the house want to blame the sales people.
Mhm.
So they want to say, oh, it's the salespeople. They just need to do more. They need to have a better sense of urgency. They, need to close more, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And what we were finding is that if you don't have that sales leader in the right spot, executing and, like you said, being phenomenal. They don't even have to be phenomenal, frankly. They just have to be focused and intentional about what their role is, which is not to close the business for the salespeople. It's not to rescue them in a sales call, right? Like, why do you need the sales team if the sales manager is going to come in and, save everything?
Yeah.
So the impetus for writing the book is really because the core is it, kind of it's the fish rots from the head down, right?
Yeah.
You need the leader of that team. And I mean, we could go on and on and on about executive leadership, but we'll stick with sales leadership today. You need that sales leader to be really focused on what their job is. Their job is to drive sales through their sales team by helping their salespeople become the best they can be and be better than they are if the sales manager isn't there. That's kind of my belief about sales management. So I think about I mentioned some of the core competencies that a sales leader, sales manager needs. So they need to understand that salespeople need to be inspired or motivated, and there's very specific ways to do that. They need to understand that not everybody is motivated the same way that they are, right? They're not going to just come to the job in the same way that the manager showed up. And they need to understand that coaching is really causing someone to be better than they would be if they didn't have a coach. I mean, Meredith, you and I are both golfers, and
Yeah.
so there have been times, and I've played golf for a long, long time, and I still periodically, when I'm trying to work on something, I go and I get a coach to help me. I mean, you look at Scotty Scheffler
Yeah.
won last week. I'm certain he was on the range on Monday working with a coach, right?
Yeah.
He was practicing it. So I think about it the same way. And then really holding people accountable isn't micromanagement, which so many people think. So that's a foundational principle, which is you got to get people to do what they are committed to doing to produce results, what they say they're going to do to produce results. And if you do that, you're an accountability partner, not micromanaging. And then if they're doing everything they need to do, okay, and they're having great success, wonderful. If they're not, then that's a coaching opportunity. So we kind of start with the foundational, do that. And then there are tactical things that a sales manager needs to do, run effective sales meetings, for instance, um, know how to manage the pipeline or coach salespeople on how to manage the pipeline. There's a lot of tactical things, they sometimes have to manage up in an organization to their boss. But really, at the foundation, they need to have the correct mindset that it isn't about them anymore. It's about the people on their team. And if they aren't willing to adapt their mindset, they might not be the best suited for being in that role.
Yeah, I mean, so well said. I think one of the biggest misunderstandings about leadership is that you get the job because you're really good at what you do. But once you move into a role of a leader, that's no longer your job anymore. Your job is to produce 5 people around you better than you are doing the job. I mean, it's really like being a parent, right? I mean, you pour all this love into your children. You hold them accountable, you're tough on them, you teach them things, you love on them, all because you want them to grow up and be better than you are. And it is you do not think about yourself. I mean, you're pouring everything you've got into your kids, and you deal with when they're mad at you, you deal with all of that because you want them to be better than you are. I always tell leaders, it's the exact same mindset when you go into this role. And I think where we miss it is that understanding that it's confusing because you're no longer the producer, and and that you almost have to unwind your brain that way.
Yep. Yep. You know, thinking about, the title of the podcast, Thrive,
Yeah.
and thinking about uncertainty, the sales manager, sales leader can be kind of a superpower in that regard, because if they can really understand the people on their team and how they're wired, so that they can help those people succeed in, whatever uncertainty exists, because the people are going to deal with it differently. There's some people who are going to be totally freaked out and paralyzed, and there's some people who are going to just do more. And so having a leader that understands that and can cultivate the positive behaviors is critically important, when we're facing uncertainty, which we certainly are, and that's probably not going to change
No.
anytime soon, right?
No. In fact, it's going on steroids. I mean, it's so funny when I thought COVID was probably the biggest uncertainty we have ever seen. And now I look at the world that we're living in, right now. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen with AI. Nobody knows what's going to happen with all the geopolitical tensions. Nobody knows what's going to happen with interest rates or inflation, or, there's just so much out there, that can impact you. Why do you think that, I love the fact that you focus on the sales manager, and I believe we can focus on executives, but quite frankly, if that layer of middle management is phenomenal, they can even overcome bad executive leadership. Bad executive leadership cannot overcome weak frontline management. It doesn't work the other way. It doesn't. I mean, I think it's the most critical, position. So when you think about skills that these sales managers need to put in, are most sales managers even aware that they're not good at what they do or not effective at what they do?
I think at some level they are aware, but they don't know how to fix it. And they don't, they want to just muscle through, do what they've, always done, I guess I would say. And what I see is that they don't want to admit it because that would be damaging to their ego, or they think that their, boss might think less of them. So I think at some level, most managers know. What I think is missing is that an awful lot of managers are stuck in their beliefs of what makes a good salesperson, and frequently it's the mirror image of themselves
Right.
and what they did. And so that can be detrimental. I see that blind spot a lot, that it's like, well, all salespeople are money motivated, because I was money motivated. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, the thought. All salespeople just need to, you just need to get out there and do it because that's what I did. And so I think that, when you talk about a world of uncertainty, absolutely, one of the things that I think in sales and sales leadership needs to happen is this, I guess, aggressive pursuit of being malleable. The old
Mm.
adapt or die couldn't be more true than it is now. And the workforce has changed. You're right, uncertainty about AI and everything, but also there's an awful lot of sales managers that were not in their management roles um,
Yeah.
during, for very long, right? They haven't been through a recession, for instance. They may not have even been in sales during
Yeah.
the last big recession.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I say that I was talking to my husband about this last night, and we were talking about a friend of ours who hasn't done well in a certain area. And he said, well, you know, he started at a challenging time. And I said, a challenging time is the best time to start anything because it's going to get easier. I was a banker and I started in banking when we were loaning money at 17%. And I said, if I can loan money at 17%, I can loan money at 2%. If you can loan money at 2%, you can't necessarily loan it at 17. So pray that you start, like anybody starting a job right now, you're lucky because it's probably only going to get easy for you. And the chops that you build right now are the most important. This is what's going to carry you through no matter what. I was talking with a young leader yesterday and saying he's going through a really challenging time. And I said, buckle up, buddy, because now you're about to be a leader. Anybody can lead when the road is smooth. This is really what's going to separate you and build the sales muscles, the leadership muscles you need to really be a phenomenal leader.
That's really great. A really fantastic perspective. It makes me think of this quote. I had a boss years ago that, by the way, I was in banking too.
Oh, of course. We have everything in common. That's why you're a golfer, because you figured out early that if you didn't play golf as a female, you were going to be inside working on Friday afternoon while everybody else at the bank was on the golf course.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And that said, if it were easy, anybody could do it. Yeah. So that you just made me think of that, with the leader you were talking about. When times are tough, that's when you really can show your true colors, right? And that's when your leadership can shine. And you're right; it'll be easier going forward. Absolutely.
What is hard to believe, but we are about at the end of this podcast. And I always like to leave with just a couple of questions. Number one, obviously, how do people find you? How do they find out about the Happy Sales Manager? Such an important book. If you have a sales team out there right now, you need this book, because if you can help the sales leader be better at what they're doing, that is your fastest path to growth and profitability. Put an effective sales manager in there, put an effective sales leader in there, and it'll grow. So how do they find you? How do they find out about the book? And then, of course, I always like to leave the audience with your biggest piece of advice. There we are in this uncertain world. What is your one piece of advice for sales professionals, sales leaders, business owners, CEOs out there listening to the podcast that could help them be more effective and start to control the change in the marketplace?
So thank you for that. So with regard to the one big piece of advice, I'm actually just writing an article about this. I was asked to write an article about best sales practices. And I think it's purging. And what I mean is,
I love that.
Purging your thoughts. Purging your thoughts about the way things are, the way things that have been. And I also think it's purging the way you've done things. We get so complacent and so comfortable, and then we want the outside world to adapt to our comfort zone, and that isn't going to happen. We need to continue to be malleable, either as a salesperson or as a sales leader. So that would be purge your thoughts and purge your old bad habits.
Nice.
That's my piece of advice. And then people can get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, Gretchen Gordon. And probably the best way to find out about the book is to go to thehappysalesmanager.com.
All right. We will make sure all of that is in the notes. You have been an amazing guest today, and I look forward to having you back again to talk more about this subject, a little bit more about golf and how we can work together to turn all of this uncertainty into our greatest competitive advantage. As always, audience, you have been amazing. Look for this episode on your favorite podcast app, wherever you listen to podcasts. Take a listen again. Check out the Happy Sales Manager. We'll see you right back here next week with another episode of Thrive. And together, we're going to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage.